SEQTA can make planning visible to every teacher so they understand where they're going with a unit, how they're going, and where to next. So let's see how this can be done. And I think the International Baccalaureate definition of a unit planner is really useful here. They define it as a period of study that finishes or concludes with some form of assessment. And the unit planner allows the teachers to establish, so what's the purpose of this unit? What are we studying? What's the teaching processes and what's the learning that the students are going to have to exhibit? And then what worked, what didn't work. That reflection at the end of the unit is critical. Now, if we think about Google Maps, where you have to put in your destination and the address you enter before you start your journey, and then you've got your destination as shown on the screen there. Unit planning is just like that. Teachers decide what are the goals, where do they want to get to by the end of this unit. And then they start to think about what are the key knowledge, skills and understandings the students are going to have to acquire through the course of that unit. So this is where am I going from point A to point B. How am I going is really the sequence of lessons that they will use to guide students through the unit. So these are like the individual Lego blocks or the individual stops on that actual route that you're taking. And it may include some detours. And the other part of this also includes formative assessment for learning, or these checkpoints that help teachers monitor students' progress from lesson 1 to lesson 2 to lesson 3 and so on. And then finally, where to next. So in this process, they're going to each lesson look at what needs further reinforcement. So from lesson 1 to lesson 2, I've realised I need to reinforce some key concepts. Or I've got all these students that I really need to extend their learning. And from lesson 2 to lesson 3, I can see kids need to get more interest in the actual topic. So I really need to think about how I'm going to do that. It also gives them opportunity to reflect on students' learning progress and plan their next steps. So where to next happens from lesson to lesson to lesson, as it does from the start to the end of a unit. And if we put it straight into a table, we've got the 3 questions on the left-hand side, and then Google Maps, you enter your destination. So this is the end of this unit. What do we want the students to know and understand? So what are the goals and objectives? How am I going? So this is the route that you're going to take through here. These are the lessons, the activities, key formative assessments, and where to next. So these are all of the stops along the way where you will decide whether you need to revisit concepts or extend student learning. So then let's apply this to the teaching workflow. Up here on the screen, you can see in this particular 12-month course of study, there are 7 units of work. So it might be number for unit 1, measurement for unit 2, algebra for unit 3, etc. And then if we break that down more, unit planner is often the first step. Teachers don't have to do it, it's optional, but lots of schools do require it. It's collaborative, they're looking at their teaching programs, and they're thinking about the syllabus or the content descriptors they want the students to achieve. They then move on to breaking that down into individual lessons, teaching those lessons, then assessing throughout the course of the actual unit and at the end, and then they have to give feedback. So that's the typical one unit workflow. And then let's break this down even further. I've got an example of a Year 10 example. This is an International Baccalaureate example where each unit goes for a term. So there's only 4 units in a year because the depth of study is so extensive. However, a Year 6 HAS unit, they're going to cover 6 units: extreme weather, child rights, migration, leadership and politics, water for future, ancient culture and civilizations. And so in this particular example, many of those units will probably be going for 5 or 6 weeks each. So now let's have a look at what this means in terms of SEQTA. So I'm selecting unit planner I'm selecting biology. So teachers enter the key details. Now schools can create their own unit planner templates, and they can have as many as they like, as you can see from that example. They can set the duration, so this one's going to be a 6-week unit. They can add in the syllabus or the content descriptors here, or the objectives. Just come into the Australian curriculum, you can drill down and find these individual descriptors. And in this example, they've got a unit overview, learning intentions, success criteria, how the students are acquiring that knowledge, and so on. This is an example of a different unit planner based on the backward by design model. So they've got content descriptors, essential questions, they've got desired results, Australian curriculum priorities, learning experiences, differentiation. So very different unit planner setup for this particular school. But what is really useful, particularly in SEQTA, is teachers can add all of the individual resources and files that sit within a period of study or a unit of work.